the Lexus RX was released and officially started the compact SUV craze. You know, this smooth, buttery, fun-looking design. It was one of Lexus's best-selling cars because it looked so futuristic and modern. We got the RAV4 around this time, and it officially kicked off, in my opinion, well, in a lot of people's opinion, the SUV craze, just because it was designed so futuristically and like the SUVs we have today, rather than the Tahoes and the bigger, more functional SUVs of that older time period, that older era. So, also growing during this time was the family crossover segment. You know, that's usually what it's called. A great example is the Toyota Highlander. Minivans were, it's very confusing. So, family crossovers were getting their start around this time. In fact, the Toyota Highlander was selling very well. Well, minivan sales were also going up. So minivan sales were like starting to plateau and would be falling by about 2010, right? They were falling in the thousands. And compact SUV sales would be going up, right? Around 2003, they reached their plateau minivan sales, and then they started a decline. So this was a huge success for Toyota. Of course, they had the hybrid version, which is what a lot of families chose. The regular version was also reliable. And the great thing about the family crossover, if you had a family, you could put the third row up. If you didn't, you could take the third row down and store just a bunch of crap in them. I mean, this timestamp right here just shows that's a very good camera for 2009. Ooh, yeah. It just shows this was a lot of people's family SUV when growing up, just because they were cheap, they were easy to maintain, and they had good reviews, you know? Like, it wasn't just a total piece of shit like many, you know, Kias and fad cars, you know? It was actually a very decent, very nice automobile. So, around this time, we've talked about Mitsubishi, we've talked about Suzuki, and we've talked about Subaru on this channel. Believe it or not, all of them had their own answer to the Highlander. Right now, unlike the Lexus RX, the Highlander wasn't the starter of this craze, right? It was just a player. A lot of people like to think that the Highlander kind of kicked it off, but actually there were several other Japanese brands competing against the Toyota Highlander and other crossovers like the Honda Pilot, both of which ended up being successful, that unfortunately failed when you look at them overall. The first one is the Mitsubishi Endeavor, released in 2003, which is the similar year as the Highlander. It was what I would call a family, right, car. This was more of a family SUV, right? Again, this was released in 2003. This wasn't competing with the Tahoe. This was more competing with the Highlander to just be that functional family SUV. Now, again, at the end, we're going to talk about kind of why these are important. I'm just going to do kind of a brief overview of all these vehicles first before I go into the points that I want to make. So it was what I would describe to be an attractive looking SUV. I mean, it's not ugly per se, it's just fine. The interior was a little bit weird, but this actually was pretty reliable. You know, Mitsubishis, they're kind of a hit or a miss around this time period. You can have really sloppy, awful ones that use Nissan parts and then really good, reliable ones. This one's kind of square in the middle. You know, it had occasional issues, but for overall it was very reliable. It had a pretty luxurious interior, not bad. Unfortunately, they stopped making it in 2011. That's the theme. So all these vehicles were either made late 90s, early 2000s. That's when they started being made. The latest one being the other vehicle that we'll be getting into at 2005. And then they all ended around the 2010s by their companies either leaving the US or this vehicle just failing and being discontinued altogether. So the Endeavor was, I've actually ridden one of these, they're very nice. The Endeavor was sort of Mitsubishi's answer to the Highlander, you know, being this family crossover, everyone getting the SUV type deal. Now, again, all these vehicles didn't catch on as much as the Highlander, right? So they never really took the spotlight, right? So again, the Endeavor was a very nice SUV. You can see it sits higher off the ground, four-wheel drive, great ground clearance. It was just overall a very good vehicle, and again, it could tow. It was a very useful SUV that that Mitsubishi put out. It was a very good car. You know, it was very reliable. They gave it some stylistic updates, but unfortunately, 2003 to 2007, the sales were pretty strong. And then 2007, the Highlander had officially been cemented with the new generation. And it's like, imagine doing cannonball into a pool, right? The Highlander's new generation was one of the best-selling cars for Toyota ever that year. cannonballed in the pool, knocked everyone out of the water. Blew everyone out of the water. That's essentially what happened here. So sales remained pretty strong until 2007, where then they fell. Every single buyer for the Endeavor just bought the Highlander. Again, I think this definitely has some value. We'll get into that later. But it wasn't ugly. You know, it could have trimmed rims if you wanted it to, these like diamond cut ones, which is very interesting because, especially from this time period, we didn't see a lot of that from Mitsubishi. They were usually just, you know, the simple alloy wheels. You know, we didn't see a lot of these fancy schmancy ones like were on the Endeavor. So they were definitely trying to sell this car, right? Also, the interior wasn't, like, again, I'm going to get back into this. It wasn't luxurious. I would say it's more utilitarian, right? The steering wheel, it's, like, in my opinion, one of the weirdest ones they've ever made. But, yeah. The entire interior is pretty utilitarian. Like, it's very plasticky, but also it'll never break. You know, like, Jeeps are utilitarian and plasticky, and then the plastic clips break and everything falls apart after 10 years. The interiors of these cars have remained pretty much the same. You can get navigation if you want to. I will say, the only really bad part about these vehicles, if you're going to use them as an off-roader or looking for aftermarket parts, there isn't a huge aftermarket presence for these. I know they have a small following on Reddit, I believe, where a lot of people are buying these as family SUVs and off-roaders. There's not a huge aftermarket presence. Also, like, if you want to change the radio, that'd be a lot easier in another car. This one's very specific, so you'd have to replace all this. It's very, just difficult to find parts for this vehicle. Number one, Toyotas usually share parts, which is why it's so easy to find them, just because, you know, your pumps are the same, the door lock actuators are the same. Mitsubishi is kind of that way, but since all these models are so old now, you know, like, an old Toyota is different because that was, like, 7 different models using the same parts. A one-off car with a one-off, like, radio DIN system isn't going to have as many parts as the Toyota just because it can only be this model that was very obscure, right? So the next model that we're going to be looking at, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the Suzuki XL7. Now, this is what I would call the Highlander's truest competitor. First of all, it started in 1998, which was newer than the Highlander. No, not newer. Later than the Highlander. This was actually released older than the Highlander was, before the Highlander. So you can definitely see the Highlander's styling here is very, I would say this is the most dead-on one from all these, just getting their start. Now, again, where they kind of, you know, it had a tire on the back. It was just a very classic Suzuki. Again, you can see that there. They were going for family functional. It's like that episode of Gumball, which I've seen. Fun functional. That's exactly what they were going for here. It was just a good SUV. They're great at off-roading. They have four-wheel drive. Again, I don't expect you to really buy an older one of these. If you're looking for just a down and dirty off-roader, these are amazing. In my opinion, if I was looking for just an off-roader like this, these are very good, but the 4Runner is better, and I would just go with a lighter, like 2010 RAV4, because they're shorter, harder to bottom out on things, you know, can get a V6. This is the updated one, so unfortunately they stopped selling it in 2007, when, you know, Suzuki was really preying on the XL7's success, right? Their sales were slumping in the US for every single model. Things were looking grim. The recession had just hit in, and Suzuki said, we're going to refresh this. Again, this only lasted about 3 years on the market after being refreshed from the older generation. They said, if this does not set in, we will leave. Like, they were preying on this to be a success. They needed this success to kind of bring the company out of its shell and, you know, be more popular with families, right? You buy the XL7, then down the road when your kid's looking for a first car, you buy the SX4, you know? But unfortunately, that didn't happen. It didn't sell very well. I will say, out of all these, this is probably my favorite. Number one, these are very obscure. Like, the first time I saw this, I was like, what is that? You know, it doesn't look like any other cars. You know, like the Highlander towards, like, the 2010s started to bubble into other cars. They all just started looking the same. This has a very, very distinct look. It reminded me of, like, a French car, you know, with that jagged styling. You know, it looks like it has, like, saber teeth. Yeah, it's a very interesting car. I will say the interior is the most normal. A lot of these, like you'd seen in the Endeavor, have these very, like, rugged, durable interiors. This one had some wood and, you know, a nice navigation system, which was a huge surprise. Number one for Suzuki, who wasn't big into that. That was more a Volkswagen thing. You know, more a foreign brand thing. Japanese car brands didn't really get into that unless they were luxury brands. Number two, this was 2007, so, I mean, look at that. That's very comparable, that system right there. Let me X out of that. that system right there is very comparable to something that we would see in like 2010, 2012 with those small bezels. I like the ones that came out here, even in Mercedes models were even had a little bit bigger bezels than that. That was actually a great system. Just surprising to see on a small crossover like this. Again, it had a third row. Suzuki was really, pointing the gun at the family, right? Oh no, they were pointing this. They were pointing this at the family and saying, "This is your car." Again, like I said, it didn't really end up selling. The back of it looked like a Saturn. Is that the brand? Saturn. Yeah. Sorry, they're just so awful and forgettable. It's like something you want to forget. Yeah. This was by far the most forgettable. A lot of people just forgot that Suzuki even sold this thing. I mean, none of their cars were really popular per se. They all looked kind of old compared to the other cars, on the road. Especially in 2012, we had the new Impreza, the SX4 just looked a little thousands, right? Now, with a grain of salt, take everything I've just said about the styling with a grain of salt. It is an amazing vehicle. 4-wheel, all-wheel drive system, amazing. It had a third row. The leather, from what I can tell, the interiors have held up reasonably well. This is just overall just a good car. The last car on this list, 2007, 2009, they kept making it through 2009. I forgot about that, yeah. Again, that touchscreen system is just amazing. I still can't believe that they had this in 2007. Toyota wasn't even doing that in 2007. Again, I would say I would probably choose this if I had to buy one of these. You just got so much room. I mean, fold flat entirely, which is what a lot of people are looking for today, and cars can't even figure that out. And just, like I said, smaller cars usually use their space more efficiently than bigger cars, Seeing like the Escalades of the world, they have very bubbly interior plastics that take so much cargo space out, but they don't really need that. It's just for styling. Smaller cars like this are more efficient just because A, they get better gas mileage, and B, they try to squeeze as much space out as possible, which means you get measures that you wouldn't get in the bigger cars when they feel like they have enough space no matter how much interior plastic they have. And again, the interior plastic in this car is useful because it's wheel well and cup holder and storage unit. Again, just look at how much space you have back here. It's very good for a third row. And again, it's not one of those third rows with like the pancake. It's like the thinness of a whoopee cushion. You're sitting on it and you have to stretch your legs all the way out because there's nothing, no distance there. This is actually very high off the ground. My feet sit. I said one the other day just for this video. Your feet actually sit directly on the floor. It's actually a very nice third row. And again, I just happened to I was just driving and I just saw one of these at a used car lot and I was like, wow, I have to see that. They're just great vehicles. I personally like it. And again, just look at how bubbly it is. The styling is so modern, and no one talked about it. No one really cared about this car. Toyota was in the spotlight. Honda was in the spotlight. Even the Endeavor was more famous than the XL7. The XL7, the only thing it's famous for is being a failure, The next car on this list is, the Tribeca. Now, again, I like to make these connections between cars. That's pretty much what I'm good at, the only thing I'm good at when making these videos. This was definitely in that thing. Now, this started the latest of the group in 2005, and it was hideous for most of its life. It also had a pretty good third row, also had some very decent space. I mean, again, the third row is more pancakey. You can see just how thin that is and how close to the floor that is. This is more of a classic third row, unless the good XL7's third row. It looked a little bit weird in the back with this, that's the only way you could describe it. Sorry, it is pouring rain right now. This is just how I could describe it. It's not very attractive per se, but it's also very useful. There's also some rumors that Saab may have been around this airplane look. If you don't know, Subaru was trying something, and when Subaru tries something, it always gets weird. They wanted to, remember, Subaru got their start making airplanes, so they wanted to bring, a throwback to that. It sounded nice as an idea. You should see the other concept cars. It sounded nice as an idea, but it was just hideous. I'm sorry. I respect your heritage. Of course, airplanes, great history. This ain't it, Chief. I'm sorry. It looks ugly. I'm sorry. The interior was great, although I will say, Subaru, out of all the Japanese brands, I like their interiors the least from this time period. This is probably the best Subaru interior. The rest of them were all slanty and had cheap-feeling plastics with bad screens, bad tech. They were all just okay. The interiors were definitely usable. They just weren't up there with other Japanese brands. I think this was probably the best Subaru interior of this time. The Outback had this awful, silver, shiny thing in the middle, centerpiece that looked awful. The Forester and Impreza had the same interior for some reason. and it had like a clock and then a screen and then like everything was just jumbled together. This looks very uniform, especially with these nice, especially with these nice, wavy lines. That kind of reminds me of the Previa's interior. If you ever look up a photo of that, it's actually very cool. Now, would I recommend you buy these? Yes and no. Again, we're going to get in the value more in the end. I'll just say, because they're so ugly, the prices are hysterically low. Remember, in 2000 and, I believe, 8, they changed the interior. Again, they changed the exterior. The interior remained the same. This, it just looks better. It looks more normal. This is exactly what Subaru wanted. Now, remember, they called the original Tribeca the B9 Tribeca. This is just the other Tribeca. Technically, they're two separate models. They're really not. They're just the same model. The other one's the facelift, and they changed the name just slightly, just to, not freak buyers out. And also, good for them. This does look a little bit clayey, like melted clay, a little bit bubbly for me. But at least they got rid of the chubby cheeks that the older one had. Not bad. Again, very good choice. I like the wheels on this thing. They were much better than the Infinity-looking piece of crap here. Just not very good. These wheels are much better. The four-wheel drive system is great. I would say out of all these, this is more family-oriented, right? So I would say the Endeavor is more, off-road. What? That is not the Endeavor. I would say the Endeavor is like if you want an off-roader. It's, in my opinion, the highest off the ground. Now, these all have very similar ground clearances. I'm just saying the Endeavor is built differently. Good approach and decline angles. Meanwhile, the XL7 is built a little bit like a Honda. Higher on its stature, but more beefy. It has a more beefy top and you know what I mean. It's less high off the ground, and its approach and decline angles are severely impacted. It's not meant as an off-roader, right? And then the Subaru would cry if you tried to take it off-roading. It's not bad. It's like directly in the middle. It has okay ground clearance. It's fine. It's not bad. It's definitely not a sedan, but the all-wheel drive system will get you through snow just fine. That's all, you should really care about. So next, why are these important? I didn't just make a video about these to educate you about the secret subclass of Japanese family SUVs and how they all failed. Remember, the Tribeca was canceled, later replaced with the Ascent in 2019. The XL7 was, the entire company left. Really, that's just to say. The Outlander ended up becoming the Endeavor. So they came out with a new version of the Outlander after the Endeavor's passing, which just gave it a third row and made it a little bit bigger. It got absorbed into the Outlander a little bit. The Outlander got a third row, yada, yada, yada. That's just kind of how it worked. That's Mitsubishi. Whenever a car fails, they just kind of absorb it into the other models, right? So, why are any of these important, and why should you care at all? Well, first of all, they're just cheap. It's very hard to find a good car. Brand new, every single car on the road, brand new car, even Toyotas at this point with the GR Corolla thing, they're all just pieces of shit. They're not made well. They're designed to break. They're designed to bring them into a dealership and get charged $12,000 for a new engine when all that was really happening was a loose bolt rattling. It's just ridiculous. They have no idea how to build cars anymore. And these cars, they may have not been a sales success, like what their respective companies were hoping for, but they're amazing vehicles today. Like, let's look at the B9 Tribeca. $7,000 may look expensive. It's really not for a car of this caliber. Doesn't have that many doesn't get that great gas mileage, but it doesn't have that many miles on it either for a Subaru. Just a very good system, Just a very good car. Reliable. Useful. Again, this is the 7-passenger. You could get the 6-passenger if you wanted to. It's, of course, all-wheel drive. If you don't want the B9, I've got a nicer one here. This is the 2013. It's new enough for Carvana. Ooh. This is the 2013 Tribeca, so we can see the nicer back. I mean, just look at it. It makes a good, not enough people bought these, in my opinion. I would buy this over the Pilot any day. The Pilot was so boxy. It was a good car, but the styling wasn't for me. I definitely prefer the Tribeca to that. And again, this one's $14,000, because the Subarus hold their value either really sloppily or very well. The Imprezas hold their value, depending on what trim level they are, pretty well. Foresters immediately dump, especially the 2014 ones. You can get those for $3,000. They have dumped their value. This is held on pretty strong. You can get these for about $9,000. This is by far the nicest one, just because it's held up the longest and the best, without any troubles. The other ones may have some slight issues, and then they're being sold at bent and dent prices. These are just, I've seen them be more durable on the exterior and interior than the other models, and that's why they sell for so much. Just because they're good, reliable, decent vehicles. more people are having families in 2024. If you just need a good, reliable vehicle, this is definitely that. The next car, I have another Tribeca. Fun. This one's nice and white. I would buy the red one though, just because I trust Carvana. Again, for 13 grand, almost 14. That's kind of what you can expect. This is the XL7. Now, this is the 2008. This is the XL7 Premium. This is just to display you can buy a cheap used car. 2008 for $2,000. For $3,000 is not bad, especially with only 149,000 miles on it. Overall, just a very good vehicle, great for off-roading. Let's say you just need a first car. This is great. You have an optional third row. Again, you have an optional third row in case you need it. You never know when you're gonna need to go on a trip or something. This car will be perfect for that. The cloth interior is very durable. All it really needs, don't be intimidated by cars. Almost everything can be fixed. That's just the floor mats. There's not like carpet torn up back here. That's just the floor mats in the third row. Very good vehicles. And for $3,000, this will safely and reliably take your family from point A to point B thousands of times. I mean, these are just great vehicles. It may not be the luxury you were hoping for, but it's still an amazing car. For $3,000, you're either looking at a Buick LeSabre, a Cadillac LeSabre, some old crappy sedan. Again, a lot of those are really reliable, but again, I would say this is more modern, and I would say this is not as reliable, but also very reliable. And you're getting a third row out of it, which means you can't really, if you have 5 kids, can't really take them all in your LeSabre, right? So this is the 2009 XL7, this is the 2008, right? Again, it doesn't matter. There were no updates for the XL7 since 2007, I believe. Again, just a nice car. This is more if you want a family vehicle. I wouldn't really buy a down and dirty one for your family. This one's $4,000. The Suzuki XL7 Suzuki's not here anymore. The parts are scarce. That's a big issue with this car, just because the company's not around anymore. There are still some companies that make parts for this car. You can see the radios, starting to die. Not a bad car, still very cheap, better condition than the other one, but still, it has leather seats, not bad, third row, classic. The XL7 wasn't bad. They've just dumped all their value, which, again, they're very reliable, but the scarcity of parts, you need to weigh the pros and cons. Getting a cheaper car is great, but because it's older and cheaper, is it worth having the parts desert that these cars usually carry with them? And then, of course, we have the Endeavor. This is personally the one I would buy. This is for $8,000. The Subaru has kept its value the best. The XL7 has dumped its value, and the Endeavor is kind of in the middle. You can get these for $8,000. This is very, definitely tow hitch. It can tow. It's like a truck, essentially. Special edition. Just overall a very nice, very good car. We can see those diamond cut wheels. This, I feel like, you could tell this was an SUV meant with a bumper bar in the front. Just very nice. Your navigation system, steering wheel, gauge cluster. Pretty standard stuff. This is the most durable, and it's also one of the biggest. You can see the very big difference in footroom from the other two. This is less family, more off-roady, which you don't have to complain from. Is that stock? Oh, I totally want that to be stock. I'm going to find out in the other ones. If that's stock, I'm totally going to love it. Your rear climate control, which it does have. Just a nice vehicle. Your automatic seats, sunroof, your, fake fold-up screen. For some reason, a lot of people did this with the fake roll-up screens where it looks like it retracts into it does not. And then you, of course, have your turn push to AC button, which is very weird. Mitsubishi was very weird around this time using parts. Again, heated seats, just a very nice car if you want it, digital stuff. This is, again, another one. The SEs were just the best. This is a 2011 Endeavor SE. Remember, we can't really see the interior too well on this one. I'm just going to take it for its word. This is the more updated one. As you can see, the grille is in one big section instead of two. $7,000 for 100,000 miles is not bad. This is an LS for only $2,000. Again, Mitsubishi's, this would make an amazing off-roader. Let's just say, you and your friends, maybe you work together, maybe you go to school, hell, I don't know. And you're just looking to just buy a cheap off-roader, something that you can, use and abuse that will not, crinkle under its own weight. For cheap, $2,000 is an amazing price for this. I mean, even if you have a family, I would buy the XL7 a little bit closer to the ground, a little bit safer. I trust the all-wheel drive system a little bit more, just because Mitsubishi's around today. But I feel like I trust Suzuki's handmanship a little bit more than Mitsubishi, especially since they were so keen to use Nissan parts. Yeah, $2,000 for this is amazing. Get in the mud, do everything you need to do. Just overall, an amazing car. So with that, thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I really hope you enjoyed this video because I know I enjoy making it.